pushing past the pandemic.
Just going to take time. You have to be patient.
COVID-19 rocking Central Texas, causing many Austin staples to shut their doors for the final time.
It's difficult for any business that was built on a tourism or foot traffic model.
Yet some are thriving, even during some of the hardest moments. Big companies putting down roots here in Austin.
Interestingly, 2020 proved to be the best year for attracting new jobs and new businesses to Austin.
And with travel coming to a halt, tourism in Austin is also suffering, forcing industry leaders to make tough decisions. This is Boomtown, pushing past the pandemic, a KVUE special presentation. Thanks for joining us. I'm Terry Gruca. It's been about a year since COVID-19 overwhelmed Central Texas, and with that came loss and devastation. Many beloved businesses shutting down, some closing their doors for good. But despite the uncertainty, many have excelled, expanding even more. It's not just local businesses. Many other businesses from other areas are coming to Texas to get a fresh start. The state is adding 1,000 new residents every day. Programming a robot is a lot like business. There's risk and reward. When you move, where you move, how you move, can position you for success. BAE Systems has been in Austin 65 years. The International Defense, Aerospace, and Security Company is one of the first big tech companies to choose Austin. Scott Hatch is the Austin Site Managing Director.
In a nutshell, we develop and we manufacture electronic systems that help bring the men and women of our armed forces and those of our allies home safely.
Home for BAE Systems is beginning to look different. The company is currently constructing a new facility off what has become a busy Palmer Lane in northwest Austin. BAE Systems is hardly alone. In 2020, during the pandemic, 109 Austin-based companies announced plans to expand operations, and 45 companies from outside of Texas announced plans to move here. That's 154 companies with plans to either relocate or expand.
Interestingly, 2020 proved to be the best year for attracting new jobs and new businesses to Austin.
One of the biggest, Tesla. Construction of the 7.9 million square foot gigafactory is well underway. When complete, it will be the equivalent of about 138 football fields and employ 5,000 people. Apple continues to build its second campus here. The 3 million square foot complex is also expected to employ 5,000 people.
So incentives are important when there's a competition and when Austin is competing against other states and other places around the world, and it's often a global competition. It is important to have that tool in the toolbox.
Laura Huffman, the CEO and president of the Austin Chamber of Commerce, says big companies tend to get those incentives. Austin has 9 active incentive agreements totaling more than $112 million. The KVUE defenders have learned Samsung is negotiating a deal right now to build a new chip factory on land it already owns near its Northeast Austin plant. It's asking for the maximum rebate on property taxes from Austin and Travis County. According to state papers, it could mean a rebate of $805 million over 20 years. In exchange for creating at least 1,800 six-figure jobs. A similar incentive Samsung negotiated and got the first time around in 2005. City records show Samsung's original incentive amounts to nearly $63 million in tax rebates. Apple is set to receive $8.6 million in tax rebates from the city of Austin. Apple, Tesla, and Samsung are set to receive even more from the county. Travis County has 8 active incentive agreements. Incentivizing big companies may seem unfair, but these big companies do more than just create jobs at their own plants. Tesla has created a community fund, which will be used to help Austin help smaller businesses.
For every job that Tesla creates, we're estimating there will be 4 additional jobs that are created. And that's not just supply chain. That will also be jobs in the small businesses that serve both the employees and the business around Tesla.
We're already seeing it. Austin's business climate is so hot, it's attracting dozens of other companies, like Scotland-based Uni Pizza. The portable pizza oven maker considered dozens of cities across the U.S. before choosing to move its North American headquarters here.
And we looked at New Jersey, we looked at Atlanta, we looked at various other places, including Dallas on the short list. And when it came to Austin, we were just like, yeah, it was like a romantic feeling of like, this is our foodie place. We love the quirkiness of it.
The food culture also attracted co-founder Darina Garland.
So that was one reason, the kind of like foodie world, but also access to talent is incredible in Austin. There's so much happening, and there's a real influx of bright, brilliant people.
Part of what they're looking at is whether or not there are people there in those places ready and available and trained for those jobs.
Every company leader we spoke with pointed out that the biggest attractions to Austin are things money can't buy.
Three things: community, the collaboration, and the culture.
Even without incentives, BAE Systems plans to double its workforce.
In terms of jobs, we have about 700 employees now. We're anticipating that this new site will allow us to house up to 1,400.
It's the kind of investment that is proving to pay off, even in a pandemic that has hit businesses hard. BAE Systems and Tesla are already investing in robotics programs at the local school level, instilling a love of science and math in younger students. With or without incentives, Austin is seeing a common goal among businesses: to keep this boomtown growing for generations to come. At Austin's airport, construction on a major expansion project is delayed. The airport was supposed to start the bidding process for some contracts this summer. Now it's waiting for passenger traffic to return. Much of the expansion was driven by demand, which dropped 62% overall in 2020. The airport still plans to double in size by 2040, but it's not clear when that will start.
I'm Luis DeLeon. I'm coming to you from the top of one of the most iconic buildings in all of the downtown Austin skyline, the Fairmont. Taking a look out there, you can take in a view of the hotels that employ thousands of workers in the hotel industry here in Austin. Some say this is one of the most impacted industries by the COVID-19 pandemic. The Austin Hotel and Lodging Association estimates 80% of hotel workers in Austin actually were furloughed or laid off during the peak of the pandemic. But there is some light at the end of the tunnel with a vaccine out now, and some hotels finally expecting to open after much delay. Starting with the Austin Marriott downtown. Their bar, Zanzibar, was the only thing open for more than 6 months. The hotel itself, empty.
We were supposed to open this hotel in August of last year, and the hotel was fully built.
But then, says General Manager David Meisner, the pandemic rolled in.
And looking at travel demand, just unfortunately had to make that really difficult decision. That brand new 800,000 square foot hotel, state of the art, that just didn't make sense to open in August.
But he's optimistic about the future, and they opened up finally on March 4th. North of here and practically embedded in the UT campus is the Otis Hotel, who, like many hotels in Austin, fell victim to the economic impacts of the pandemic, temporarily closing up.
We certainly hoped initially that might be a 2 or 3 months time period. We did not anticipate originally we're going to be closed for almost 1 year.
Pre-pandemic, they had 250 employees and have just around 30% of that back to work as of mid-January. STR, who tracks hospitality data, reported that Austin had an average of 31% of its hotel rooms occupied throughout 2020, compared to 77% in 2019. And while leisure travel is up, experts say it's business travel that'll help hotels recover, just a matter of when it'll return.
So we would expect that towards the later part of the summer, in Q3 and Q4, we see some pickup in business travel again.
The American Hotel and Lodging Association projects half of hotel rooms to stay empty across the country throughout 2021. Low occupancy means low staffing levels.
Convention business, the largest of the meetings, the largest of those gatherings that have been restricted by government regulations locally or otherwise are going to be the last ones to return. So,
Joe Bolash, the GM of the Hilton Downtown and president of the Austin Hotel and Lodging Association, says despite devastating numbers in 2020, there is optimism going into 2021. As for other hotels in Austin, the Austin Marriott Downtown plans to employ more than 150 people.
I think our business has always been built, and especially our industry, on having fortitude and having grit and being able to persevere through difficult times.
The Otis also hopeful.
It's just going to take time. We have to be patient.
Hoping more people check back in when it's safe to do so.
And our overall message is one of optimism, one of hope that it happens sooner than later, but with the knowledge that it absolutely will happen.
In Austin, I'm Louis Stillione.
Next, working from home means empty offices downtown, forcing struggling business owners to make tough decisions. At the same time, Austin's Skyline is growing up. You're watching Boomtown, pushing past the pandemic, a KVUE special presentation.
Trucks, SUVs, vans, and fleet vehicles are involved in thousands of accidents every year. Call today. Thomas J. Henry is available 24/7.
Welcome back. With fewer people working in downtown Austin, businesses aren't seeing the typical foot traffic. Bryce Newberry shows us how that's forced many store owners to either pivot or completely shut down.
For the last 17 years,
hey, how are y'all doing?
Parts and Labor on South Congress Avenue relied on foot traffic. But when the pandemic hit,
it felt like I was just personally able to function at a minimal output.
Lizelle Villapando's livelihood also took a hit. In April, sales plummeting nearly 93% compared to the year before, being forced to close amid new restrictions and staff exposures.
You're biting your nails because you're thinking about the sales that you're losing and how much further in the hole we're getting being behind in our finances.
Running a store quickly turning to keeping up with changing rules, keeping staff safe, and doing what she could to keep the cash flow going.
That was a whole job in itself.
The cash flow immediately finding a lifeline from digital sales.
Without the tourist element, that was the next and only option, it seemed like.
She started posting on Facebook and Instagram more, but shifting the focus to virtual foot traffic wasn't an easy step.
We had an online presence, but it was a side note, kind of obligatory, or it didn't make sense to put a lot of labor hours into a web store when we're paying premium rent to be in a foot traffic area.
The time-consuming task and expensive consulting paid off. Digital sales 5 times higher this January compared to last.
It's a big bite that stings, but you have to do it if we want the store to survive.
But next door at
come on in.
Big Top Candy Shop,
it's difficult for any business that was built on a tourism or foot traffic model It's just not as easy as shifting to online sales.
Surviving wasn't a matter of going online.
In the candy business, there are already established online retailers. They're going to be the first ones that are on any Google search listing.
Brandon Hodge owns the 13-year-old South Congress Sweet Spot, where business dropped about 65% in 2020.
A lot of us are just holding out hope that we can stick around long enough to recover successfully. And make no mistake, it's going to take years. We are in a years-long economic recovery here, and small businesses will always be the first to go.
And unfortunately, some local businesses already did go over the last year. According to a new report from the Downtown Austin Alliance, at least 12% of downtown's 742 storefront businesses permanently closed over the last year. Janelle Moffitt is Director of Research and Analysis for the DAA.
Foot traffic is the bloodline, right? It's the lifeline. You need customers to come into the doors and sort of, take part in whatever you are selling or providing.
Downtown is starting to see an uptick in businesses operating, up about 14% since July.
Thanks, Ellen.
But for business owners like Villalpando, even though the worst may be over, the best is still a ways off. So she'll keep running the store, making this conscious choice every day.
Choosing to be adaptable and choosing to be flexible means that there will be less frustration.
Less frustrated, while she waits for that
How you doing?
Bustling South Congress foot traffic to return.
Been in before?
In Austin,
Welcome back.
I'm Bryce Newberry.
More changes are coming to Austin Skyline. A look at the growth here in Central Texas continues after the break. You're watching Boomtown, pushing past the pandemic. The Austin skyline evolves year after year. Here's a look back 3 decades ago at the city in Lady Bird Lake. Fast forward to today, and Austin is almost unrecognizable. And those changes aren't slowing down. With several corporate relocations coming to the area, many developers are jumping at the opportunity to build more offices and housing. There are dozens of towers planned or being worked on downtown or just outside it, including hotels, Google's new tower, and apartment buildings. But the pandemic forced a couple of developers to make some last-minute changes to their high-rise buildings in downtown Austin. As KVUE's Jenny Lee reports, the pivot affects a historic street that's still evolving.
Above downtown, dozens of cranes zigzag Austin's skyline, each one signaling a new development. On Rainey Street, 2 high-rise projects are set to see their own cranes in the coming months. The first one is scheduled to be built here, where the Container Bar and Bungalow currently sit. Just down the road, at the corner of River and Rainey Streets, the second project is expected to be constructed where Craft Pride is currently operating. But unlike other high-rises, the developers for these 2 projects were forced to ditch their original plans.
We're evolving this project.
Thanks to the pandemic.
I decided to make a major pivot to the project based upon what I saw as the writing on the wall.
Kevin Burns is a developer and CEO of Urban Space Real Estate and Interiors.
Sure.
He's behind the project at 90 and 92 Rainey, where before March last year,
this was going to be a 300-key hotel with the ground floor bars and then residences above.
But after COVID-19 hit, Burns got rid of the hotel portion, along with a year and a half worth of work.
I had to stomach the fact that I was giving away countless hours of investment and a lot of finances as far as all of the work we had put into designing it as both a hotel and a residential project. Letting that go and being able to look forward with a clear path.
The project is now a residential tower, tentatively called 9092 Rainey, a 51-story, 440-room high-rise. 20 of those are affordable housing. We asked the developer of the second project, River Street Residences, for an interview. They declined. We got this statement instead. It reads in part, early concepts for the site called for a mixed-use program featuring a hotel and residences. However, plans for the hotel were eliminated from the design in 2020 due to disruption in the hospitality market caused by the COVID-19 pandemic.
Did Austin take a bigger hit compared to San Antonio, Dallas, and Houston?
Sure. Yes, I would say definitely yes. Austin had the highest RevPAR of any city in the state. RevPAR is the revenue per available room.
Paul Vaughn is a senior vice president of Source Strategies, a company that tracks the hotel industry in Texas.
Austin was the best, brightest market for hotels in the state. They were at the highest altitude and had the furthest to fall.
Vaughn says in the second quarter of 2020, demand for hotel rooms in Austin dropped by 86%. His analysis also shows a 60% total revenue decrease from third quarter of 2020 compared to the same time the year before.
We are not predicting that revenues come back to 2019 levels until 2023 or 2024. A developer who's working on their plans now really has to, consider their options.
Josue Miners also wants developers to think twice when it comes to historic neighborhoods like Rainey Street. He's on the Austin Design Commission. And while Miners doesn't speak for the commission, he does see an upside to the pandemic when it comes to his role on the advisory group.
I would never wish for a business to suffer as a result of the pandemic, but I think that it has provided an opportunity for a lot of these developers to take a second look at the current market conditions, think about the future of our city and what our needs truly are, and adapt accordingly. So I'm appreciative that there has been a positive outcome out of something that has clearly been such a loss for so many people.
Meantime, Burns says he's in talks with Container Bar and Bungalow for them to be part of 9092 Rainey. Expect groundbreaking for the $250 million project sometime next year. A 2.5-year project that he says will continue the evolution of Rainey Street. In Austin, Jenny Lee, KVUE News.
Teen-wheeler accident.
happening across Central Texas, but one thing remains the same. This city, this community is resilient. And when things get tough, we prove that we're strong together. Coming up tomorrow, we'll take a look at what we've lost, what we've gained, and what the future holds. That's part 2 of Boomtown, pushing past the pandemic. Thanks for joining us.
Headlines, they come straight at you, asking you to watch them and read them. Are they true?